Today we'll have on my far right, Minister of State, Honorable Joe Harmon. We have the Minister of Finance, Mr. Winston Jordan, and we'll be joined in a few minutes by the Minister of Public Security, Khemraj Ramjattan. Mr. Harmon would make some brief remarks before we begin.
Mr. Archer, ladies and gentlemen of the media, Cabinet at its meeting yesterday discussed several matters, but principal among what our discussions and the decisions were centered around the 2015 budget and matters as it relates to public security. Therefore, this morning, our press conference will be dealt with by the Honorable Minister of Finance, and later on the Minister of Public Security, Vice President Ramjattan, who is at this time addressing some young people, and he will join us later on. But in the interim, the Honorable Minister of Finance will make an opening statement, after which we will take questions as it relates to the 2015 budget and financial matters connected therewith. I now ask Minister of Finance, the Honorable Mr. Winston Jordan, who has presented an excellent budget, to speak to you.
Thank you, members of the press. I'm not making any opening statement. I'm going to read a press release on the Berbice Bridge matter, and then I'm going to deal with a couple of issues that have to deal with the budget, and then we'll open the floor for questions. Okay, the press release says, and I've made some available, is that during delivery of the budget speech on August the 10th, I announced that with effect from September the 1st, 2015, the toll for passengers, cars and buses will be reduced from $2,200 to $1,900, a 13.6% decline. At the same time, the toll for all other types of vehicles will be reduced by 10%. In introducing the reduction, I noted that it will be the first of a phased reduction in the Berbice Bridge toll. On May the 12th, I met a four-man team from the Berbice Bridge Company, Inc., led by its Vice Chairman, Mr. Ravi Ramcharita. I restated the intention of the government to facilitate lower tolls for users of the bridge to bring some relief to the people of Regions 5 and 6. I indicated that the company will not suffer any loss, since the government will pay to the company the difference between what is now charged and the reduced toll, in effect a subsidy. Mr. Ramcharita requested that the government's proposal be put in writing. This was done. He also said that the company would like further discussions to take place on the proposal and an extension in the concession period from 21 years to 40 years, or for the government to give consideration to an application for an increase in toll made to the PPPC government on March the 15th, 2015. I indicated the willingness of the government to enter into a series of discussions on matters of mutual interest, beginning with the implementation of the reductions announced in the budget. I also announced that Mr. Christopher Ram will engage the company on the procedures for effecting the reduction. The first meeting between Mr. Ram on behalf of the government and Mr. Ramcharita, Mr. Board Carter, the company's CEO and finance manager on behalf of the company, was held on the same day, May the 12th. At that meeting, the company's representatives indicated a preference to receive any subsidy quarterly in advance, subject to adjustment at the end of each quarter. This was agreed. The letter containing the formal proposal was sent to the company the next day. It has taken the company over 2 weeks and several telephone calls before an inconclusive response was finally received. Apparently, at a meeting held on Thursday, August the 27th, the directors decided to place the matter before their shareholders. With September 4th fast approaching, the government is concerned that these delaying and dilatory maneuvers appear designed to frustrate the reduction in the tolls and hold the traveling public hostage. the government wishes to amicably conclude with the company the mechanism leading to the implementation of the announced toll reductions on September 4th. While we respect the concession agreement signed with the previous administration, we believe that lowering the tolls is in the national interest. We take this opportunity to restate our resolve to do everything possible to bring relief to the traveling public in regions 5 and 6 who use the Berbice Bridge. So that's the press release I intend to leave with you. I may have made a mistake on one of the dates. It's not me. As you know, today there's Parliament, and essentially this Parliament should be called to look at one bill and the laying over of certain regulations and orders that have to do with measures in the budget. I just want to particularly draw your attention to one of the regulations that has to be laid over, since I learned that there could be some filibustering of it this afternoon. I hope it's incorrect, but this has been learned from a very credible source. And this filibustering appears to be something to do with the fact that I announced some set of VAT reductions, but these do not appear in the bill. Let me indicate what was announced in the budget. Hold this to me. When I read, you tell me if it's in the budget. All right? Okay. A supply of cereals. The cereals there? Good. Carrots? Yeah. Milo and Ovaltine? Nestum? Mustard and mayonnaise? Uncooked chow mein? Good. All right. Vinegar? Yeah. Pasta? Ketchup? Yeah. Chicken sausages? In packets. Chinese sauce? Baking powder? Yeah. Liquid detergent? Household clean agents? Paper towels? Yeah. Yogurt? Yogurt was the first one, I think it was. Okay. Right. I'm happy. And printers. Right? And printers. Well, yes, and printers. The printers is in the front part on the bill. You don't shop? I don't shop. So essentially then, this is the bill that is before the House. Okay? And what I've read from the bill, you have ascertained is in here. The only item that is in here and not on the bill is locally fruit juice. Let me see it
locally
here.
made.
Locally produced fruit juice. Fruit juice. Okay? Now in reading just now, notice I didn't use the word locally. But in the speech, I have 4 items that mark locally. I have locally made chow mein, locally made fruit juice, locally made uncooked pasta, and locally produced Chinese sauce. And I did read this in the budget speech. But when I finished reading, I got a couple of calls from various people and knowledgeable people who said we cannot use the word locally because it discriminates between imports and locals. And under the WTO rules and the Treaty of Chaguaramas as revised, you cannot discriminate. Indeed, we are paying $1.3 billion for discriminating under the environmental tax. Okay? And so, having taken further advice, I had to nip this in the bud. So, as you can see, no word marked locally appears on the bill. Now, since we can't use the word locally and it will discriminate, we decided not to go with the juices because compared to what is produced locally, a huge amount of juices in this country are imported. And therefore, not only will we be mad to do that, because it will saturate the market even further, killing the nascent domestic industry. But we will be losing a hefty amount of revenue in the meanwhile, okay? So, to compensate, sort of, we have added biscuits, a supply of biscuits, and on representation from the Milko, the flour people, this was after the budget, we decided that it was indeed a proper representation, and so instead of only certain flours that are zero rated for VAT, all flours are now going to be zero rated for VAT. All right, so people like me who can't take the regular white flour, the multigrain, and the 8-grain flours, and the flours made out of durum and roti mix and all these, they are now going to be VAT-free. Okay, isn't that a reasonable or even a better compromise than imported fruit juices? So my understanding is that they want to be some filibustering. So I'm laying it out very clear, because sometimes you're right, we don't get our message to the press in a proper manner and a timely manner. So if the filibustering starts this afternoon, it can't be about this. Everything that is in here except locally fruit juices. But further, we have added new items here, biscuits and all the flours. And we've gone even further, because in the bill also, that wasn't announced in here, we have a supply of items as approved by the Commissioner General, excluding motor vehicles and all-terrain vehicles imported or acquired for use by charitable organizations or non-governmental organizations, or for free distribution to the poor and less fortunate. That wasn't announced in here, but we have taken the opportunity here on representation again from several charitable organizations and so on to do it, right? Because it's the same regulation, it's the same order that has to be made. So we tidying up a set of things, we put one in the bill, and then, so that is that. So that is taken care of, essentially. Now, you've seen a lot of, I've read today's papers and I've seen a lot of different headlines. I wouldn't comment on them and so forth. Many of you were in the Parliament the other night, I think it was Thursday morning before the bill was passed and so on. Mr. Jagdeo, who's the leader of the opposition, had every opportunity to ask me any question he wanted, okay, within the standing orders of the Parliament. I did not refuse to answer any of the questions put to me. I refuse to answer questions that are not within the standing order. You see, many people don't even know what the standing order says, and that's why they couldn't rebut what I was saying. The standing order says you cannot ask a question, among other things. You cannot ask a question for which a line item has a 0. You cannot ask me about what you think I should have done. You can only ask me what is in front of you in the budget. So the questions that were attempting to be asked, right, were out of order, and I made it known. So if we're bringing back good governance and so on, we must stay within the law. You may not like it, but you have to change the law if you don't like it. But you have to stay within the rules of the House, right? And that is what exactly it was attempting to do. Stay within the rules of the House, lest we degenerate into something else. But if Mr. Jagdeo, who's the opposition leader, want to ask me any question within the rules of the House, I was prepared to answer. I had 3 thick books with all the answers. And I was disappointed, to say the least, A, at the small number of questions asked, B, at the quality of the questions. They were just rudimentary questions. If you want to ask questions that will give you a result that the people of Guyana could appreciate. All those questions that were asked, a couple of them, were designed to either embarrass somebody who's working in the ministry or some other place, or some other agenda which I think any serious analyst would easily detect where the questions were going. I don't have to spell it out for you. You're seasoned enough to understand what was happening there. But, you know, he had his opportunity. He never once got up to answer a question. I would not like to be in battle with Mr. Jagdeo, because as a leader, if you keep prodding those behind you, you don't want to go in front, then there must be a problem somewhere. So he had his chance. He never once got up and asked me a question. All right? And there were only two sets of people who asked, Mr. Edghill and Mr. Orfanali, who asked questions. And you will think the Minister of Finance, who prepared the budget, would have been there for the next 2 or 3 hours being grilled. I'm sure you were disappointed, right? That a mere 5 or 6 questions, repetitive questions designed to elicit some kind of answer, was the only thing that you wanted out to the Minister of Finance. I personally was disappointed, but not unexpected disappointment, essentially. Okay, and there was this issue about the pensions. Oh, before I go to the pensions, the appropriation bill. There seems to be a lot of confusion, for which I fail to understand all the years of budgeting here, how we could have such confusion. Look, the budget comprises 2 kinds of expenditure: appropriation expenditure, statutory expenditure. I don't know how many of you have the big book that we produce, the estimates, but if you look at the back of the estimates, there are detailed definitions of terms that are regularly used in economics and finance. And there you will find what is an appropriation expenditure and what is a statutory expenditure. All right? Statutory expenditures have a forced claim on the consolidated fund. What does that mean? If I earn $100 and the dear lady over there is the Auditor General, her salary has a forced claim on the $100 before any other expenditure. Okay? Before any other expenditure. So she can be paid, and all of us lesser mortals can be there watching while she's eating our bread and we're starving. Right? Because her salary has a forced claim on that $100 that we just earned. Similarly, the public debt. Right? We have to pay the public debt first before we pay everything. As a result of this, you do not bring statutory expenditure to the Parliament to be voted. Okay? So statutory expenditure is not voted by the Parliament. It is also not inquired by the Parliament. It cannot be inquired by the Parliament. Somewhere else, but not by the Parliament, once it's a statutory expenditure. So this budget is $221 billion, give or take a few change, of which 181 point something billion is appropriation expenditure, and another 39 point something billion is statutory expenditure. The expenditure before the Parliament is the appropriation expenditure. That is why it's called an appropriation bill. That is before the Parliament. Okay? 181 point something billion is what over the last 3 days we were exercising our patience and whatever else over. And that has been passed. Passed as amended doesn't mean that I presented 181.9 billion and it's now 161 point something billion or whatever you wanted to think about it. It is the same 181 point whatever billion that I first presented to the House. That was what was passed. The amendment has to do with the structure of the bill. Okay? And that structure came about when the opposition led some big set of hullabaloo over some set of rights commissions and whatever commissions that were not inadvertently, it was not inadvertently placed where they were placed. It was advertently placed there. Why? There are about 12 or 13 rights commissions, of which about 8 or 9 of them were actually placed individually. Supreme Court was there by itself, and all the others. There are a couple the Rights Commission, Indigenous Peoples Commission, I think Ethnic Relations Commission, for which certain individuals seem to have a fetish over. And there were another one or two. Procurement Commission, which is not even activated, was an issue, and so forth. Okay? Procurement Commission was not placed anywhere because it's not activated. The Ethnic Commission, Relations Commission, was placed under an agency, right, that had to be appropriated. Okay, and I think Rights Commission was under some other set of things, about 4 or 5 of them that were things. The amendment has to do with these entities that were placed under agencies instead of being placed individually. Okay? Well, the reason why when we sat down at the budget, myself and my team, when we were doing the budget, we said, listen, where are these people going to be placed? They're so small. They have to have their own accounting agency and all this kind of thing. Where are they going to be placed? So we couldn't come up with an answer. So we said, listen, put them back where they are, but we're going to roll up their budgets as provided for the lump sum. So you have under that agency mark, subsidy and contribution international organization, they will be there, they'll be rolled up. Okay, and the money will get disbursed and so on and so forth and so on. There's no big old balloon. All this crisis about 7 hours wasting time and thing. There was not a big old balloon and so on. So to look, for peace sake, we said, all right, we're going to do this and so forth, and we're going to produce a new appropriation bill, which is what we did. The appropriation bill now reads, instead of having, for example, maybe Parliament had about 2 or 3 different constitutional agencies. So instead of having Parliament, say $500 million, you will now have Parliament 300 million, the constitutional agency 100 million, and the other constitutional agency 100 million. You're still back to the same 500, right? And that's why the total as presented earlier is the same total that has been voted. So when we use the word amended, it's not as if, we were benched and put a couple of lashes over you and then, go and do it and so on. No such thing, right? It was a simple, basic issue that could have been resolved even on the floor, all right? Even in the National Assembly, it could have been resolved. We could have continued and the changes could have been noted, and in the presentation of the new bill to be signed by the President, to be assented to by the President, those changes will be made. You see, you're too young, but back in the day, there used to be 2 estimates. And as presented, right, and when the Assembly went through the estimates and they agreed to the changes, it went back to the Ministry of Finance, and we were subsequently required to produce an ASPAS that would have been presented to the Assembly just before the new budget was presented. That was the practice. That practice more or less sort of ended because subsequent budgets were never altered. You present them, you went through the motion, somebody got the majority, they ram it through, no changes. So why produce an ASPAS equal in thickness and pages when the as presented was also there? So we just, back in the day, what we used to do is take the additional books that weren't thing and write ASPAS and paste it over the as presented. Story finished. You see? So the practice hasn't died in that sense. It was just in an abeyance. And all that was required there, if that was a big issue, is to say, look, when we come to, for example, Parliament, I want these to come out. So when you say Parliament, you say 500 less 200, which is for the constitutional agencies. When you come to the constitution, you say constitutional agency X, 100. Constitution Y, 100. And that could have been taken care of on the floor. It didn't require. But of course, it's gamesmanship. And if I were in the opposition, I will milk it to the maximum. So I'm not knocking them, please. I'm just merely explaining exactly what is all about, right? They have their work to do, and we have our work to do, right? And if people feel we blundered, I can't say, I'm telling you, it was not blunder, right? It was just a question of interpretation, and for peace sake, look, let's do and get on with this show, because all of us got lives and we got other things to do. And just before I end, I just wanted to talk about the pensions, which seem to have had a big hullabaloo. The pension on the old age pension, the old age pension is absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. It's just a bit unfortunate that sometimes your helpers are not a real help as such, and the minister was sort of shortchanged in that respect. Okay, for the first 8 months of this year, old age pensioners were paid $4,887,300,000 for the first 8 months. Okay. For the next 4 months, beginning September to December, that will include the changes, all right? $3,156,382,000 has been set aside and voted day before yesterday. How this was calculated? It was calculated thus. We were given 42,397 pensioners. That's what they said were the pensioners on the roll at the time when we were doing the budget. They will now get $17,000 each per month for the next 4 months, and that will come up to $2,882,990,000 roughly. Social public assistance, they told us there were 9,361 people receiving public assistance. They are now going to get $6,500 per month for the next 4 months, at least this year. Their bill will be $243,400,000. Okay? And what we didn't tell you, because sometimes, people don't want, even, not because you're begging for alms, they should be, made to feel less. We had a little small piece of single parents who go into social protection and so on. I mean, we didn't even mention it in the budget speech. There's a $30 million there, so we got to wash the linen and open now. There's a $30 million there set aside for the single parents who go in and ask a little help and so on. And when you add those three figures together, you will get $3,156,382,000. Okay? So it is really sad that they start to make, a meal out of these poor senior citizens and poor, unfortunate, and vulnerable people. But again, as I said, you milk, you put out there and you milk whatever you want to milk. But I just think it's a bit sad, and it's not right. But that should set the record straight. That's all I would want to say at this stage. You could ask me any question on the budget that you wish to answer. Yes, sir. Yeah.
Mr. Jordan, Neil Marks, Capital News. Could you clarify for me? Did you say that all NGOs will benefit from duty-free concessions?
All registered and approved NGOs. There's a process of being approved as an NGO that involves the GRA. The guidelines are with GRA, and you have to do a certain set of things, and they will then indicate to me that this NGO has met all the requirements and seeking my approval for them to be put on the register of approved NGOs.
And on the Berbice Bridge issue, basically you're waiting at the moment on the company to
give the blessings and tell me that the people will start getting the lower fares on September 1. I don't know, I mean, I'm not being facetious, but I don't know what we need to do to count every car that goes across the bridge and say, well, listen, this is $300, that is $300, that's 10% reduction, give me a bill. I am giving them the money up front quarterly. So they're making it 3 months interest, 2 months interest, and 1 month interest, because I'm giving them the money quarterly in advance. And they need to we need to reconcile at the end of every quarter to see whether I have to give them more or whether the balance can go over to the next quarter when I give them the new quarterly increase. You agree with me? Do you see a problem there?
Just a quick follow-up.
yes.
Just a quick follow-up on the Berbice Bridge multilateral NCN. If this delay continues indefinitely, is there a way around it, and have you looked at any other?
Well, let us always say that there are always options. Some of them you don't want to do. Like we said, this is the age of collaboration and cooperation and so forth. It's a private company, and there's a concession agreement in place. We have to respect the concession agreement as it relates to the Berbice Bridge. all right? But the Berbice Bridge doesn't own the river, okay?
Kurt Campbell, News Source. Mr. Jordan, you provided several clarifications. Could you also say if there's any allocations in the budget for the University of Guyana student loan program, and if yes, how much? And could you also clarify how much money was spent on the state funds rather was spent on the president's inauguration as reflected in this budget?
That last one I've answered this morning on 98.1, but Ms. Waller Lawrence had, not Ms. Waller, Ms. Nicolette Henry had already answered that no monies was spent on the inauguration of the president. $1 million was used to clean up the stadium to host the inauguration. Now, if you want to attach the $1 million precisely to the president inauguration, I can't stop you. If I were you, I'd be smart enough and say yes. Depends on which camp I'm in. But essentially, the stadium benefited from the cleanup of the $1 million. It's not as if they went there and they put up arches and balloons and all this kind of thing with the $1 million. The $1 million was used to trim the grass, do a bit of maintenance of the stadium, clean the toilets. You been to show there and see what happens after you leave there. It's a war zone, right? And so on. So that was used to clean up, do the car parks with all the patching the holes because of the amount of cars and so on and so forth. That's an asset that still remains, right, there. $1 million was used to do that. No other funds was used, okay? And look, when we make mistakes, we must be big enough to say. At least I'm older than most people here, but not as old as everybody. But we grew up drilled in us. If you make a mistake, beg pardon, you know, and move on. The girl at the Parliament tonight, I mean, can you honestly put that $35.6 billion was spent on the inauguration? I mean, honestly, is that a news item in a little poor Guyana? $35.6 billion. But you know, I mean, I know the press has its work to do, but is that responsible journalism? Let us, for argument's sake, even see that the minister said so. Let's just for argument, but not agreeing. You honestly, in your mind as a journalist, will say $35.6 billion was spent on an inauguration? Man, we would love to have that money, man. That is, look, our whole budget was 181 billion. Take 35.6 as a percent of 181 and see what you get. You know, come on, you know. There is a limit to which this kind of yellow journalism is allowed to even permeate, you know, the society and news for anybody calling himself credible, and to be quite honest. UG, yes. UG's, the student loan agency, no money is in there for the student loan agency, not because we're going to abandon the students, but happily we can state that enough has accumulated in the revolving fund for the loan fund to start revolving for the first time since its inception in 1994.
A figure to the how much?
I'm thinking it's close to $1 billion or over. It's both a combination of repayments and unused balances from the transfers that we have been giving them through the years, right? And together with a bit of interest that they earn and so on, right? So it will revolve from this year. I think it's, you know, it's probably going to revolve for another 2 or maximum 3, because there's only roughly about $1 billion or so in there. And at an average of about 400 and something million a year, that's only 2 years' money. But at least it's a little ease of the pressure on the budget, essentially, right? So lest you hear somebody running around hollering, no money is thinking that they're abandoning students and so forth, that's the reason why you're not seeing it in the budget, essentially. And I may say to you, while in the past, in previous years, University of Guyana's transfers or subvention was padded with the amount that we were going to use for the student loan agency. If you check, UG alone for this year is going to get almost 900 million of monies physically being transferred to them. And then, since the fund is revolving also, right, out of its own monies, and that goes around about 400 or thereabouts per year, you're talking that UT is finally going to hit the $1 billion mark, you know, after all these years, in terms of what is actually being transferred to it. Okay, and I'm not even speaking about the Berbice part of it, just Turkine campus. All right? So.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen of the media, as I did indicate, the Honorable Vice President and Minister of Public Security will have joined us. He is now here, and I would give the Honorable Minister an opportunity to make a brief statement, after which the Minister will be prepared to take questions.
Well, my apologies for being late. There are two very important programs, the professional training of our senior ranks at the police academy, and there was a presentation of certificates, and then a private-public partnership with Zara, group of companies out of America, training young persons in the use of computers and also maintenance of computers as part of the drive to ensuring that the young people are usefully occupied. They had something also at the police academy downstairs that I had to be. My short statement to you is that Mr. Winston Jordan has been very kind to me in relation to all those resources and paraphernalia that we had requested for the last 4 months that are going to help in the reduction of crime, largely lots more land and water transport, resources for arms and ammunition, and also for the strengthening of the police force administrative levels were granted for that 4-month period, that is next month on to December 31st. The request for higher scales of salary for policemen, well, of course, we couldn't get that in view of the fact of very many constraining and challenging circumstances. That was asked of me just now at the police academy. But we have to take these things in good stride. We have managed at least the resources for more patrols in those areas which we have mapped as high crime areas. Presently it's Berbice, Quarantine especially, and we have sent down a unit from JSOG, which is the Joint Special Operations Group made up of Army officials and police officials. We have sent up also a number of members from the SWAT team that were in Tactical Services Unit, and a unit out of the A Division, Special Crimes Unit of A Division. So we have 3 bodies of about 12 or 15 men, that's about 4 to 5 more men, that have strengthened Berbice. And we are also getting lots more senior detective work there. So it is not simply doing the patrols, but doing the detective work. And that quality detective work apparently is paying off in relation to that incident at 45 Village, where we now have evidence literally that it was the husband that might have been involved rather than anybody else. And it is that kind of quality work that we would want to see the police do. As you would appreciate, though there might be lots of social reasons for high crime rates, we also have to strengthen the police work. And as part of that, the professionalism is required. And I'm pleading with policemen, as I did this morning, that the training that we're giving with these 4 officers that came from overseas, in California and Ohio, I think they're from, senior ranking officers that have been now retired but training. They must inculcate that kind of training. But also, they must do what is called a piece of inward stretching so that they could outwardly reach. They have to do their own self-learning. A lot of the police just go to these workshops and they feel that's the end of the matter. But there must be a continuing education by tapping into the websites of law journals on policing, administration, policing methods, and so on. And I've pleaded with them as regards that, so we can make better detectives out of those that are detectives. And so we are on our way, I hope that given some time, we're going to see the reduction. It is not T20 cricket when it comes to crime reduction. We have to better the institutions. We have to do lots more work with the individual policemen, and at a larger level too in our society, getting job creation done so that young people can divert their attention to jobs and so on. But it's all part of the economic situation too. So bear with us, and we're going to do a better job of it come 2016. I'll take any questions that you want to ask.
Sir Gildari, Kaiser News. We've been talking a number of years about the capacity of the police, the law enforcement agencies to be boosted. But it seems to be a perception as if there's no cooperation from the police, specifically to the administration. Is it your feeling that there's a will from the police to assist the administration? Because there seems to be a perception. We've seen comments on it as if it's the same old, same old. I just want to get your thoughts on that.
Well, it is not the same old, same old. When I took over the Public Security Ministry, I did immediately start a set of meetings with all the senior divisional commanders, the senior ranking officials, and requesting what their problems were. And they were very emphatic about it. It was a comfort zone with the political administration. They were not getting the scholarships to go on these programs as readily as possible. And you know the term that I use largely in Parliament. They said, ministerial and otherwise, especially out of the office of the President with that administration, an element of control freakism. Everything they had to get passed through. Now, you do not do your police force that. You have operational matters which they are experts in, until, of course, it is proven that they have made bad decisions. But you have to give him that level and allow them to do the things necessary where their experience tells them and their expertise tells them that they should do. That was not being done. The fact of training was one, the fact of also in relation to the divisions, commandeering the divisions. There was a little control freakism there as to what ought to be done, and it was coming more from the minister. And the minister was advising, more or less, allow the policing community groups to be the dominant factor. Now that cannot be. I have now rearranged that for purposes of ensuring that police crunch, police core values, police core activities must be done by policing, by policemen and policewomen. And so I think indeed that though you might not see the results of it, but enhancing police comfort level in getting their work done will pay off. The other thing was resources and the paraphernalia for them to use, better guns, better quality guns, more ammunition, more training in that regard, patrol vehicles. And I have here a number of these vehicles that we're going to have, 10 more 4x4 double cab pickups, over 6 more minibuses, Land Cruiser, about 15 more motorcycles, a number of bicycles. We want all of that to help in the patrol, and of course, lots more motor vehicles in and around the country, all coming up over just under $200 million. And then the other line item that we did for capital of ensuring that police stations are going to be rehabilitated. You need better conditions for a policeman. If they go in and the toilets are in a mess, or you know, the bedroom facilities for overnighting is in shabby conditions, they're not going to perform. And so over the long period of time, they have sickening kinds of quality treatment, treatment there that are not of quality, to the extent that it is not going to be helpful. They're not going to want to go out next morning and so on. And we got to ensure that their kitchens must have good stoves so they can make their breakfast and their lunches. And we have done all of that in relation to capital. And we would do lots more for 2016, but for the first 4 months of the administration for capital rebuilding, we got quite what we wanted, and we are now going to put them out on public tender to ensure that the police force is at that comfort level where it's going to deliver.
Hi, Erica Williams from Nightly News. With regards to that $42 billion, I think a scandal I would want to call it, with the miners who were smuggling gold out of Guyana within a 4-month period. I know the US government has revoked their visa. What is government going to do about that locally?
Well, there are a number of things that the government can do about that locally. I would want to better relate to the natural resources personnel and that ministry for what they will propose as doing. In relation to public security, of course, we will take the investigation to the individual levels once those files are sent to us. But as regards what is the state of affairs in relation to that, I would leave that to Mr. Harmon and his team in the Natural Resources section of the Office of the President.
Good morning, Jamal Goodluck from Starbuck News. In the Assembly, you were questioned as a 5% opposed to 20% for law enforcement over the year for the first year in office, according to the manifesto. Is there a plan for an additional 15% over the next year? And what is the plan, if there is a plan?
Could the Minister of Finance help me out as regards that?
I would love to have even more percentage for my policemen. But
What, salary?
Yeah, so the first year in the manifesto is at 20%. However, it's 5% that was said in the Assembly. Is there a plan?
But no, it's not right. The minimum wage, I presume, is the same in the police force as it is in the public service. And if you go strictly on that argument alone, then you have salaries that have the range from 26% right up to about 10% up to those who earn $100,000, and right up to like about 6.5% for those who earn about $500,000, which I presume is the commissioner, I would imagine. So
correct, but in the former
that
Attorney
might have
General.
been a mistake on my part, because I was giving a category
Yes.
there, only the category. But all those policemen that were less than $100,000,
will
they're
be
going to
earning,
get the, what's the percentage?
yeah, the range, it will range from 10 to 26 at the bottom.
26%.
So,
Okay, and additionally, the retroactive is from the 1st of July opposed to the 1st of January. Is there a rationale behind that?
yes, everything has a rationale.
What's
Is there
the rationale?
The same rationale that you can go to the 1st of January. Look, there's nothing concrete or in stone or in practice or in anything that says you have to start from 1st of January. You must be able to do some research, and you will see that salary increases have been paid from various dates, March, July, June in the past. There's nothing sacrosanct about 1st of January. What you look for is to determine how much you have available to make available to the workers. And then you determine the best approach to use it. I can give you, I think I used this example before. Let us say you earn in $100,000. I could give you 13% from January, in which case your increase is 13,000, right? 13,000, that's correct, 13,000. And your yearly increase, right? 13,000 times 12, 12 3 is 36, 156,000, correct?
Yeah.
Good. Or I could give you 26% from July 1. That's 26,000. That's all?
Yes.
What's your new salary? Now what's your new salary? You tell me.
Same thing.
Huh? Your new salary is how much? 126,000. No, same thing. Your new salary is $126,000. Your salary is the base on which your pension is calculated. So now I give you July 1st, 126,000. January 1, 113,000. Tell me which one you want. You're bearing in mind, your vacation allowance is calculated 1 month of your salary. Your pension along the road is calculated on the base salary. Okay? And by the way, your total given for the whole year is the same. Check 26 times 6 and see whether it's not equal to 13 times 12. Okay. So that's what I'm saying, sometimes you read these things and You know, I mean, I'm a figures man and so on and so forth. But even you collecting a salary, you must be able to say, you know, where am I going with this kind of story? I'll tell you though, were I in that position, I want 26 from July 1. Because come next year, January 1, when you're giving me an increase, you're giving me an increase on a bigger base than if you make the increase retroactive, half of it retroactive to January 1. Right? So that's just little, not camera tricks, mathematical tricks, if you want.
Gordon Mosley, News Source. Mr. Jordan, sir, do you care to give us an idea, an average of the subsidy for the Berbice River Bridge? Can you break that down for us, how much the government will be forced to put in it once this deal goes forward?
Yes.
And Mr. Ramjattan, sir, it's been over 2 months since this party done 2 o'clock. Enforcement has been in place, but yeah, we're seeing the crime going up, and there has never been a study in Guyana that shows that there's ever been an increase in crime after 2 o'clock. In fact, your own police force, they've said the crime goes up usually around the evenings and afternoons. So do you think you might want to revisit that, especially when you have your tourism minister talking about entertainment being a big earner for the government?
Yeah, I on the subsidy, I think the subsidy will, on present traffic flows, it will be somewhere in the region between 120 and 140 million. Thereabout, give or take a couple of millions. Per year. Obviously, it will go up when we look at another phase reduction and so on.
Look, I want to say that there is a correlation between heavy drinking and drinking at 2 o'clock and after, and violent crimes and domestic violence, abuse and all of that in Guyana. The ministry has the statistics, and if you would like to share in them, I can. But it is very much correlated, heavy drinking with violence, abuse of women, and so on. And I am not going to change that. The law is more or less there that it must be at 12 o'clock. It's only the high-ranking hotels and so on that to go to 2 o'clock in the morning. And what I did was to ensure that that law is applied to 2 o'clock. And if it's any change that I'm going to make, quite frankly, this well, at least my ministerialship would like to bring it forward to 12 o'clock. We have to set standards here. And the law is that we must close up. Otherwise, we're going to have young people more out in the streets late at night, drinking and misbehaving, because drinking has a correlation to misbehavior. And we have to set some standards. And the law is, as it's present, that if you are going to, when you get your liquor license, it states midnight. All of the liquor license. And we have been breaching the law. That is what has caused us where we are, to be where we are. And so even, that is why in relation to tourism, they like Pegasus hotels and a number of hotels, they go up to 2 o'clock in the morning. They were granted the license for that, for tourism. But it's the same thing when we go tour in New York City. New York City's timeline is 1 o'clock in the morning.
Not for closure.
Well,
most
it
of them
is.
for the end of sale.
Last call, whatever it is, it is that you have to. And then you go out, and then they don't even sell you liquor. They got plenty places that don't sell you liquor. But it is important that there will be, look, the good things that got to be done for crime reduction are going to be very unpopular things. And I am willing to do the unpopular things to see that this crime reduction is done. And we are not a very wealthy country of lots of citizens being wealthy. When you don't go and take your money and you drink up, people will say, oh, that's my money, the Ramjattan ain't got nothing to do with that. But I am urging, because a lot of the wives and women in this country are saying it's a good thing because it has brought my husband home a little earlier and he got a little more money in his pocket.
But is that again, sir, is that the
whatever it is, I know it's going to be.
Responsibility
It is my responsibility to do certain things, one of which is to enforce the law. And the law is maximum time for the curfews, 2 o'clock in the morning. I am doing that. You want us to change the law? Well, set up a petition. We're going to start probably dealing with that.
And on Mr. Harmon, if you could chip in with regards to this issue, has the government developed a proper policy when it comes to the state media Today we're seeing the Guyana Chronicle talking about the state media being answerable to the government of the day. Just last May, when Mr. Granger was then opposition leader, he spoke about the government having less to do with the state media. We're hearing of the Director of Public Information being the chairman of the board for the Chronicle, Mr. Archer being a possible member for that board. We're seeing a party candidate sitting as the head of GINA. Is this administration really serious about taking a more hands-off approach when it comes to the state media? And what is your policy?
That's quite a long one there, Gordon. But what I can say is that these are still early days of the administration, and the policy is in fact being considered. It is not fully complete, and therefore there are a number of things which we have to do that guarantees that there is responsible reporting of the news in the media. It is important that we establish clearly that there is a responsibility which the media has to ensure that news is put to the Guyanese public and the public at large, the international community at large, that is responsible. The Minister Jordan just spoke about one of the headlines in one of the newspapers today that came out of a report that was wrong in the first place in the National Assembly, that came from this thing called Citizen Report. But the point is that we have to now craft in this country things that are responsible. We have now a situation where, because since we came into office, there's a greater degree of openness. We are publishing more information out there. The media is more connected. The public is more connected. So people are now questioning things more. We are happy about that. We are prepared to facilitate that. But in all of that, there must be a certain level of responsibility in what you put out there. The media as the fourth estate is an important element in the governance of a country. And therefore, it's not something that you can touch or do as you want. But it is early days yet, and I believe that a policy will emerge. But what we are saying now is that the media must act responsibly, and that if you are reporting on government business, that reporting must be fair, balanced, and objective.
And sir, with regards to the president, could you indicate the reason for his recent visit, unannounced visit to Trinidad and Tobago during an election cycle in that country, 2 visits during the past month? And could you also say why the administration does not appear to be advertising many of these public relations positions within the ministries? We're seeing them being filled by former candidates of the APNU AFC.
Well, what I can say to you is that there are some measures that needs to be done now, some which will have to be done later. There are situations which require immediate action, and therefore those actions are taken by the government. In relation to the visit of the president's visit was of a private and personal nature. He went to Trinidad and Tobago. It had nothing to do with elections there. It was of a private nature. I think at the press conference that was held at the National Assembly, we made that clear. This was a private visit, and as I told you before, the president is also entitled to some private time to take care of his personal matters.
Minister Harmon, let me take you back to the end of June. I don't know if I can recollect properly, but I seem to remember you saying that you received Jagnarayan Singh's resignation from GRDB. But then recently, I think it was a permanent secretary that said that he's still a part of the organization, but is on leave. So I'm trying to understand what's really happening there.
Well, I don't seem to be able to put all of what you're saying together. What I do know is that we did, in fact, receive his resignation, and that is what I reported on. What might have happened after that, about him going on leave and all of that, you know, when somebody resigns, sometimes there's leave and so on, and they're entitled to certain benefits under the contract that with which they're employed. So it is not unusual for a person resigning and proceeding on leave to which they are entitled under the contract, and at the end of that contracted period, then the resignation takes effect.
Yes, that is the present situation with Mr. Clement Seeley. He's not there, but his leave takes him till to December. Then his resignation officially takes effect.
And Mr. Minister Jordan, could you quickly indicate to us what exactly is the position of Mr. Corlett within the Guyana Revenue Authority? Because he has been signing some letters for the head of the GRA.
He's entitled to do that. He's the head of the Policy Coordination Unit, which is the number 3 job in the. You have the commissioner, the deputy commissioner, and then their heads. So those heads, all of them, you could deem them number 3. He's the head of the policy coordination.
And with regards to the current gold scam investigation, both KANU and SACU, along with the U.S. authorities, they have written to the Commissioner General requesting certain information with regards to legal exports of gold for some of the businessmen who were in that fraud. He has not been, according to them, he's not been too forthcoming with that information. Is this something you will probably look into?
Well, it's the first time, actually the whole gold thing is the first time I'm learning about it this morning. I read the papers, and the first time I'm learning what you were saying. So it's going to be something I'm going to follow up immediately, because I'm not aware that that has been an issue.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you, Winston.